Well, it's been a newsy couple of days for that other Ontario team that I haven't had a whole lot of interest in talking about lately for fairly obvious reasons. But the Leafs had their big staged fight. I'm sure everybody feels better about that now. They've shit-canned their GM. We've had a press conference where the CEO of MLSE sort of made it clear he still has no plan. So, yeah, everything's good in the land of the blue and white, isn't it? Matt Robinson with you, as always, in the TCA studio here. Thanks for checking this one out. We've sort of been scooped here a couple of times, right? I mentioned on our last show with Steve Lloyd from the TSN 1200 Morning Show, which is available now, wherever you're hearing me, that on Sunday, Rob and I had just finished recording when the Vegas Golden Knights news, the Bruce Cassidy firing for Captain Headcase himself, was announced, and we were already done, so we sort of missed that. So we had to get to it on the next show a day later with Lloydie. And then after we finished recording with Lloydie, we get all the Leaf news. And so we're a little behind again on this. And that's just the way it goes sometimes when you're not live. And it's really not the end of the world. I don't even know how much any of this really matters. But I do feel compelled to weigh in on some of it because some of it's really stupid. God, it's stupid. So we get to the big fight. The Auston Matthews revenge game. And it just is the ultimate example of the stupidest elements of the hockey code. And it makes me crazy. So try and follow the logic here with me if you can. Because as best I can tell, is that the Toronto Maple Leafs are soft because they didn't do anything when Radko Gudas threw a pretty gross knee at their captain and ended his season. And Radko Gudas has a horrible reputation. He's done this sort of shit before. Guy shouldn't be... Anyway. Then the Leafs do come back and respond in the third period. There's fights, there's hits, there's whatever else. But nobody cares. You didn't do it in the moment, so they're soft as shit. Okay. No problem. I can get there. But now, we're going to talk for 2 weeks about the return game in Anaheim, which was just on Monday night here. And how, buckle up, that's going to be can't-miss television. Well, didn't you just finish telling me that the Leafs failed and it didn't count in the third period because they didn't do it right away, but now it will count if you do it again 2 weeks later? And we've been all aware for a long time this team isn't physical. They aren't hard-hitting. They aren't fighters. They are soft. But now, we're supposed to expect this huge explosion? All right, I guess I'm with you. The guy who threw the horribly illegal knee and has injured countless players throughout his NHL career now gets a redemption tour of his own. He's now a noble guy. He insists that despite the fact that he's hurt his foot or his ankle in a game since then and hasn't been playing because he's injured, he's been walking around telling management, telling coaches, I'm going to play in that game. They deserve a chance to confront me face to face. I did this. I will be in that game. And everybody's talking about this guy like some proud warrior all of a sudden. Okay, we'll ignore all the careers he's shortened over the course of his career. And now we'll talk him up, I guess. George Peros, the head of league, discipline and the guy who hands out all the suspensions. Well, I better make my way to Anaheim to supervise this game because the Leafs, who 10 minutes ago everyone said were the softest team in the league and never do anything, are likely to murder somebody here. They're going to go crazy. They're suddenly going to be the toughest, the reemergence of the Charlestown Chiefs. I can't get there. Are the Leafs soft or are they bullies? Is Gudas a criminal or is Gudas a hero? Was it over the minute that they didn't do something the moment Matthews got hit? Or should we have been building up the fight for weeks like they did, trying to sell, I guess, one more regional broadcast? Maybe that's all it was. We got to tell people there's some reason to watch. And the best part of it, man, the best part of it for me, well, It has its pros and its cons. The Blue Jays got their doors blown off on Monday night. And when that happens, it takes a really long time. You can't get anybody out. They're out running the bases and cashing in runs all over the place. And there's all kinds of pitching changes and all this stuff. And it takes forever. And you know, because they had been talking about it for days, that they wanted this 9:30 p.m., probably shortened slightly, but pregame show to help tee up the fight, build the anticipation for this big revenge game. And then the Jays take so long getting their asses kicked that they have to start the Leaf game on the secondary network so that the main network can stay with the Jays game, which has been over for an hour, but isn't technically over. So half the world misses the fight anyway. Max Domi gets in there. He punches Radko Gudas a bunch of times. It didn't even look like Gudas tried to throw a punch. Some people will tell you that's intentional. It was just him, letting them have their pound of flesh and not defending himself. I don't know. It seems a little bit silly, but he is injured. Maybe he couldn't really fight the way he wanted to fight. I should mention in my string of things here that don't make sense in this stupid hockey argument and everybody having to live up to the code, Radko Gudas is, for some reason, the captain of the Anaheim Ducks, who are fighting for first place in the division. Were you not okay to play in these last couple of games and now are okay to play Monday night and did take a regular shift? Are you still actually hurt and coming out for this stupid stunt might actually get you injured for longer and could cause you a setback that could hurt us later while we're trying to make the playoffs, trying to win a division, trying to win a couple of rounds? How is that a good leader for Anaheim? I know they'll tell you it's so that the big, scary, goonish Leafs wouldn't beat up on some of the other young players that Anaheim has, but I don't know that anybody believed that was a reasonable, possible outcome. So he looks like an idiot, too, playing injured for no reason. Either you could have been playing before, or you shouldn't be playing now. But Domi gets in there, gets the fight, beats him up, either because Gudas chose not to fight back or couldn't fight back. And what do we get out of it? Immediately afterwards, Anaheim scores twice. So to get us fired up there, the Leafs all feeling good now, feeling more like a team. We lived up to the code, even though it leads to Anaheim getting the momentum and starting to score on you right away. And the very first reply I see on Twitter, who I guess are the hoopleheads we're trying to impress at this moment and show that we're a team, is, doesn't count, didn't do it right away. Well, then what are you doing? What was the point of any of this? Weeks of just nonsense. For the Leafs to pretend they're tough in a game that doesn't matter because it's just what you're supposed to do, but actually you were supposed to do it right away. Actually, you did do it in the third, but that wasn't enough, and it didn't count because it also wasn't right away, but it will count if you do it in 2 weeks. Like, what the fuck? Just twisting ourselves into knots to try and pretend that there was anything even marginally reasonable about any of this. Leafs do come back and get the win, which they don't really need to be getting. But man, what an embarrassment. It happens that on the same night, they fire their general manager, which was warranted. The timing was odd. First of all, you let him run your trade deadline and I got no problem with the idea that you wanted to jump a little early and get talking to people earlier and start your search earlier and just fire him without waiting for the rest of the season. I got no problem with that. Why didn't you do it Monday morning at 9 o'clock or Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock? Why did you do it Monday night at 9 p.m. while your team is supposed to be foiling up and getting the boxing gloves on for this big thing and give them this distraction before this huge pivotal moment for the franchise where they got to go out and fight for their lives? 9 p.m. on a Monday night. That's when you want us to believe you came to your decision, huh? Probably not. And speaking like we did a minute ago of the Sportsnet crew who, had been hyping this fight for weeks now, they also, once the news of the Treliving firing broke on Monday evening, started tweeting out, we'll be on the air at 9:30 after the Jays game. Because, It's a big piece of Leafs news. The Leafs have been irrelevant for a long time. This is one of the last things we're going to get to cash in on for the year. And the Jays just stay out there taking blow after blow after blow and eating up all of their possible airtime to come in and just breathlessly speak of the firing of perhaps the worst general manager in Toronto Maple Leafs history. That's a conversation for another day, but he will be on the podium. But that made me laugh. Just knowing that they're running around, can't wait to get on the air, and instead... And it's not even like the Jays are kicking the shit out of somebody else, and people are having fun watching it. Nope, we're all just going to wallow in this misery, and then I'm going to chuckle a little because it is stopping them from doing what they would rather be doing. I don't know, I have an odd sense of humor. But like I said, and as far as the timing goes, I have very little issue with doing it when they did it, other than, like I said, if you were this close to doing it, you probably shouldn't have trusted him to run your deadline. Keith Pelly did address that at his press conference on Tuesday, which I'll get into in a second. But if you weren't going to do it then, do it now and get out in front of it. Just thought 9 o'clock or 8:30 on a Monday night was odd. And I guess Pelly also did suggest, and other people had floated, that, to be fair to Brad Treliving, if you're out here talking to other people and reporters are getting word that this might be happening, just fucking do it. I'm not going to walk around here like an asshole for 2 weeks pretending I'm your general manager when the whole world knows you're already interviewing my replacements. If you're going to do it, just do it. And so maybe that is how it played out. They had that particular exchange Monday evening and it went from there. But it all looked a little strange and added to the chaotic looking nature of this. Look, Brad Treliving was a bad hire. He was a bad general manager who did a bad job. When all of those things are true, you deserve to be fired. There was some terrifying notes or reports floating around a couple of weeks ago that while Craig Berube would be fired, Brad Treliving might be given another chance. I had no time for that. And now we won't have to be subjected to it. But I mean, you go all the way back to the beginning of this thing, right? Shanny and Dubas have their blow up in 23. Dubas tries to come for the king and misses, to quote the old expression. Shanahan hires Treliving. MLSE has to end up firing Shanahan, then has to end up firing Treliving. Like, what a fucking gong show. While the organization went in the wrong direction year after year, to the point where they're no longer even relevant. They are closer, obviously, as many fans hope, to the bottom 5 in the league than they are to contending, well, for a playoff spot, let alone a championship. This was a mess from the very beginning. And it wasn't even necessarily just that Brad Treliving was bad, which he was. If you can find me a trade that he won in his Maple Leaf tenure, I'd be happy to see it. But for the most part, it's been loss after loss after loss. But it's not just that he was bad. It's that he couldn't even get on the same page this year with the coach he hired. Or last year, if we really want to dig into it. Like, you can argue all day about whether the trades for Lawton or Carlo or Nick Waugh were any good. The Nick Waugh one's a little different. He got something in the whole Marner fiasco. But what was the point if your coach didn't like any of them? Like, Scott Lawton wasn't used properly. Brendan Carlo was not ever put in the right positions. I don't think he's any good anymore. But you keep putting him on this pair with Riley that has never worked. I know that was the idea when you went and got him. It didn't pan out. Move on. But this coach is married to it. Scott Lawton, from the minute he arrived, Craig Berube was like, fourth line center. Gave it a cursory look in a couple other positions in the first couple games, and then started playing him with Calle Yarncroke and Steven Lorentz. Gee, I wonder why he didn't produce. So what were you doing? Do you not even bother talking to your coach and say, hey, we have a chance to get Scott Lawton. Hey, we have a chance to get Brendan Carlo. What do you think? How would you use them? How do you think they fit? Because if he says, I don't like any of those guys, I'm not going to use any of those guys, we have two different ways we can go. I can fire you for being directly insubordinate, Or I can respect your opinion and not trade away first-round picks to get these pieces that the coach isn't going to use properly. And like, this organization has been out of alignment as far as coach, general manager hirings go for a long time, right? They had a chance to get Mike Babcock way back in the day. At the time, highly respected coach, best coach in the world, all these things. Leafs, to their credit, spend the money, go get him. Now we'll go find a GM and find out later whether that GM likes this coach. Now that one works out okay until they have to fire Lou Lamoriello, but now Kyle Dubas inherits a coach that already everyone knows is going to be a bit of a problem. These two don't really see the game the same way. Babcock is openly insubordinate and trying to embarrass Dubas right off the hop, right from the minute of the Jason Spezza benching in Game 1 of the regular season. So that blows up in flames like everyone knew it was going to after one more year lost, after one more ass-kicking from the Boston Bruins. Sheldon Keefe comes in. Now we move forward, and Dubas gets fired. Brad Treliving inherits Sheldon Keefe. Well, I don't want to fire him right away. We'll sort of see how it works out. I like the guy. Turns out that doesn't work either. Brad Treliving fires Sheldon Keefe. I don't think it was an unreasonable firing, but another case of a GM inheriting the wrong coach, at least for what he wants to do. But in this case, you have your coach. You got to go out and pick your guy. You picked Craig Berube, and you motherfuckers can't get on the same page. You can't communicate as to, hey, I'm about to get Scott Laughton. You cool with that? No. Whoa, all right. We should talk about that. Or he doesn't communicate with his coach and just hands him to him, and his coach goes, nah, no. And now that's a first-round pick wasted, and a guy who gets misused, mistreated, damages his career. This was your coach. There was no excuse for the way these player acquisitions panned out. That's the fault of both of them. But ultimately, the guy in charge is the one who's going to take the bullet for it. And I assume Berube will be right behind him.
You're fired.
Sir, try to land on Leonard's carcass.
Look, I've done this all before. I've been done with Treliving for a while. You all heard the analogy, those of you who've been here for a while, I used at the time he was hired. He's the Boston Pizza guy. Yeah, it's fine, I guess, if there's nothing better available. And that's what they did. The most convenient available option. And it left them and their fans with sore bellies. Like I said, I've been talking about it for years. I didn't like it, I didn't whatever. We don't have to relitigate every bit of it here. I'm sure it'll come up a bit from time to time as we look towards the new guy. But they announced that Keith Pelly is going to have a press conference on Tuesday afternoon to face the media. The press conference goes as follows. Welcome, everybody. Here's what's happened. We have fired Brad Treliving. And oh yeah, I've seen reports that I'm involved in player evaluations and I'm involved in the trade deadline, and that's not true. So literally the very first thing after saying what's happened here is that he's got to get out there and defend himself. This is all about ego now for a minute. This is, I got to clear my name. This isn't about you right now, man. So that's got to be a good sign, right? That the guy in charge who's still here is going to be making all the decisions is most interested in protecting his own reputation. So that's good. And then he gets around to saying that for the rest of the season, Ryan Hardy and Brendan Pridham, two of the assistant GMs, will sort of co-manage this thing to the finish line. And then they'll figure it out in the offseason, have a search and whatever else. And then it opens it up for questions. And to be fair, this was always going to be about the questions. But it makes me crazy that he had to take time out of this press conference, and not just take time out of it. It has to be at the top of the list of things to talk about. Is, yo, don't talk about me. I was not doing any of that. I'm not trying to be a GM or a scout. All right. Would have been nice if you could have pushed down your vanity there for a second and just let that go, but here we are. And I don't know, for the most part, he didn't say anything interesting. Said, I'm open to hiring a president and a GM in one guy. I'm open to hiring two guys, a president, and then a separate general manager. Opening to any other type of structure, which is used which is a word he used 349 times during the press conference. Structure. Despite not having a view of one, an idea for what that structure might be and what they're looking to do, he did use the word a lot. But he says he's open to anything, which is great, I guess, but it means there's no plan yet. I don't know if somebody tells us that this setup would be the best. I could be talked into that. I don't know if somebody tells us that setup might be better. I could be talked into that. Have an idea, man. Because what we just watched, and look, I got no beef with them firing Shanahan either. It was probably time. But you didn't replace him. So now you have no sort of middleman between the GM and the ownership. And regardless of what I thought about Brendan Shanahan, it was one more hockey voice in the mix, as opposed to one more Keith Pelly voice in the mix. So they need to go back to having somebody else in that position. That should be the structure that we're shooting for here. But that was one takeaway from this press conference, is that they have no set idea. But he also said, essentially, for the most part, which is what you're supposed to say, that I will leave, what happens next with the roster to the new hockey executive that we hire. And that's fine. But he kind of repeatedly said, we have some foundational pieces here in Austin Matthews and William Nylander. Like, he's telling that new guy before he even starts interviewing them, we're not interested in full scorched earth rebuild. As you guys know, I don't think that's where they have to go yet. I think they have one more year to try and get this back on a reasonable path. But you did just say you would leave it up to the new guy, while sort of heavily hinting throughout the press conference, yeah, we're not doing that one thing. Like, you've sort of taken one option. What if the best guy you talk to, whoever that's going to be, and God, please, don't let it be Doug Armstrong. You've sort of taken, if he comes to you and he says, look, this is going to take a little time, and by the time we get there, Austin Matthews is going to be 32, Nylander will be 33, Riley, if he's still going to be 36, 37. We should probably just get started on this. Because those pieces right now, if we traded them, could help. We could bring back some young players and some first-round picks maybe, or whatever it looks like. It doesn't sound like ownership wants to hear that. And why would they? Those jerseys sell really well. Can't raise ticket prices when you shouldn't. Maybe they will. Can't raise ticket prices when you're rebuilding. He kind of made it a point in executive speak to tell you, hey, this will be your show within limits. And he used another term that bugged me here. There was a comment or an answer that he gave, again, talking about what should happen to this organization next and whether the coach will be back and who will be back on the roster. And he again kind of goes, I'll wait for the input of the new hockey executive. You're like, maybe that's just misspeak. Maybe that's just the way he talks. You shouldn't be looking for his input. You should be looking for him to take the job, and then you should get the fuck out of his way. You're not a hockey guy. You're a TV executive and a golf tour executive. I don't want to hear you say, I will be open to input from our new president of hockey operations. He gives you the plan and then goes and executes it. He doesn't give you input on decisions for you to make. That word just troubled me a little bit. Maybe it's nothing. It's a press conference. You're under the bright lights. Everybody's flinging questions at you. Maybe it's nothing. But the idea that he will look for input seemed to be dramatically less than what I would hope he would want from these people. I want to give you this dramatic undertaking to turn around the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are currently floundering, and I want you to go turn them into a winner. And I'm going to stay out of your way. I'm going to give you all the resources you need. Giant expenditures. I would expect you'll have to check in with ownership. But otherwise, go do the job. to kind of dial it down to, or narrow it down to, yeah, we're going to hire this guy and then I'll take his input. No, I did not care for that. And the other takeaway for me was just the obliviousness to the world you're operating in. When he's talking about we weren't prepared for this, and someone asked him, like, what happened to allow this season to go off the rails quite so badly? And part of his answer is, well, we didn't see Buffalo and Montreal coming, the freight train that was Buffalo and Montreal. And I openly and fairly sarcastically guffawed at that. How long have people who follow hockey been sitting here and saying, I don't know when, but at some point Buffalo and Montreal and Detroit and Ottawa are coming. So your Tampas, your Torontos, your Bostons, your Floridas, get ready, because there was going to be turnover in this division, and it was going to get rough when those 4 young teams that had forever been at the bottom of the division were ready to step forward. It was just a matter of time. To varying degrees, we've seen it. Montreal has arrived. This will be their second straight year in the playoffs. Detroit's right on the cut line. I don't know what to make out of them. Buffalo, they are here. They've been one of the best teams in the league since November. Ottawa's still life and death to make it, but they made the playoffs last year. They've been better than their record shows this year. It's been mostly about goaltending, but those young teams are here. And for you to say, in front of the hockey world, in the center of the hockey universe, to all that media, oof, man, we did not see Buffalo and Montreal coming. Why not? What were you looking at? Where were you looking if that snuck up on you? Come on. Like, that does not fill me with confidence that this guy is even a little bit qualified to be swimming in these waters at this level. We didn't see 2 of the most young, talented teams in our division taking a step forward? Really? Good God. Stop talking. There's another point where somebody asked him about, because they did say, and it was interesting enough, I should mention it here, that they want the new hire to be open to data, right? To be data-centric. I don't know, he didn't use the word analytics, but that's sort of what I took away from it. And somebody asked him about, well, somebody could have asked him about Kyle Dubas, who at one point I think was under your umbrella. Anyway, Eric Tulsky. And he went on to talk about Eric Tulsky for like 3 minutes and the guy was just making a point. Is that the type of executive who wasn't a traditional hockey guy, but was strong in analytics, strong in data, who's now successfully running a franchise? Is that the type of hire he'd be open to? And he droned on and on for like 3.5 minutes about Eric Tulsky specifically. First of all, you're tampering. I'd cut that out. Second of all, no one asked if you're going to go and hire Eric Tulsky. No one asked for your opinion on Eric Tulsky. They used Eric Tulsky as an example. Like, there was a certain amount of meandering old man in this press conference that I've heard before. And look, I'm sure he's a bright guy. I'm sure MLSE has not turned over the keys to this multi-billion-dollar conglomerate to somebody who meanders like that in board meetings and stuff like that. I'm sure he's a bright guy. But these press conferences, when he is given a microphone, are painful. Stop talking about Eric Tulsky. Stop talking about how you didn't see Montreal and Buffalo coming. It's all bad, man. You're making everyone cringe, and the less time you're in front of this camera, the better off we're all going to be. I think concise and to the point is going to be the key for you. Not long, just drifting paragraphs about nothing. Or about something that make people question you as opposed to make people believe in you. It was not a good press conference. The Leafs are not in a good place. Maybe I'm just not in a good place with the Leafs. But I think that's reasonable. Why should I be? They have hardly given me much reason to be overflowing with confidence in where they're headed. But we'll see. They're going to hire a search firm, it sounds like. Maybe it's just somebody who flies directly to St. Louis and offers Doug Armstrong the job. I hope it's a little more in-depth than that. They said they would prefer to have somebody in position by the combine at the end of May, but for sure by June for the draft and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see how quickly this plays out, who they can get permission to talk to. Mike Gillis was one name they mentioned, who used to be a player agent and then ran Vancouver for a while. Didn't do a bad job. That might be interesting. I'd have to kind of go back and read about the end of his tenure and what exactly happened there. It's not fresh in mind, but it is an interesting name that at least tells me they're open to some new things, which is really all I need to hear. Because if I find out it's just Jim Nill's assistant or Doug Armstrong or, heaven help me, a Pete Chiarelli or something like that, all hope is lost, I would say. But if they're going to actually do something a little more exhaustive and dig around for somebody, then who knows? Maybe this is salvageable. Maybe somebody can come in and this is it. To his credit, Keith Pelly did say at his press conference, this is likely the most consequential thing I will do in my tenure at MLSE. And that's true. TFC fans, Raptors fans probably aren't going to love that, but this is true. And I'm at least relieved to hear he's aware of that. What they do with that remains to be seen. But this is the next decade of the franchise on the line right now with this hire. Can you sort of put yourself back into a playoff contender next year and kind of keep adding a couple of pieces and extend this window a little longer and then get into a competent rebuild, which is sort of what you hope would happen here, the dream scenario? Or do you make a bad hire that just puts the nose down and drives this thing the rest of the way right into the ground? We'll see. That's it. Stupid fights, stupid hirings, appropriate firings at stupid times, bad press conferences. Just another week in Leafland, I suppose. Anyway, we'll wrap it up here. We'll be back later in the week with something else. Until then, thanks for listening. My name is Matt Robinson. Have yourselves a great day.